Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to Mark Anthony's Music Picks. Today's episode number is 138, and for today's episode, I wanted to come and pay respects to one of my friends and do a focus for his label. Today we're going to talk about Verdant Recordings, who is run by my friend Andy Green. Andy is one of the first people that I interviewed for my channel in my From the Booth series. I think he was number 3 in the series. So if you want to watch an interview with Andy and I, it was about an hour. I'll give you a link down below in the description section and you can go and check that out. I think it's a great conversation between Andy, who's a label owner and a music fan, and me being more on the DJ side of things. And it was interesting for me to be able to pick Andy's brain and ask him a lot of questions about what it's like to actually run a label. The name Verdant Recordings is, I didn't realize this at first, but it's a play on Andy's last name. Green is, verdant is another word for green, and I think that might be an Italian thing. I'm not sure, but either way, it's a way for Andy to sort of play up his last name. And I thought it was also cheeky that during the interview, Andy also had his background light set to green to just sort of play it up and have fun with it. But one of the things I want to say about my channel is, there's a few different motives for why I do these videos. One of them is to interact with people. And a kind of a secondary effect that I wasn't really anticipating from doing these videos was that I ended up making friends. I've accumulated a lot of contacts and people that I speak with on like a daily, weekly, monthly basis just from doing these videos. And I think out of all the benefits that come from having a YouTube channel, I think that's the best one. I mean, I've made some actual, real, legitimate connections with people, and some of those people have really made my life better. So thank you, and thank you to all of the contacts that I made, all the people that I send texts to and Facebook Messenger messages to on the regular. You're very much appreciated. But getting back to the label, Andy started Verdant Recordings in 2016. And one of the things that I like about the way that he did that label is he's just a regular guy that started a label. And his motives are pure, his intentions are pure. It's not really a money play. It's not how can I cash in on a certain sound. In fact, I bet if he was pressed, you would find out that he maybe is break even or has even lost a small amount of money running the label, but I don't think he cares. And I like that he doesn't care. It just shows that he's doing this music and releasing it in a very organic fashion, and he's doing it just for the sake of longevity and to get his music out there into the world. The people and the artists that are featured on Verdant Recordings are people that Andy just knows organically through going out and going to different parties and festivals. And when he ends up having a conversation with somebody that makes music, maybe either that person or that person's friend will send him a demo, and if he likes it, if he feels like it fits the vibe of the label, he constructs it into a release and puts it out. For the artwork on the label, there is a woman that does some of the art on the labels, and I'll show some of these to you here. Her name is Sophie O'Leary, and I believe that Andy said that is the friend of Lee Dixon, who is a producer who appeared on the first Verdant release. And so you have, again, the art is just coming from word of mouth. This person, I know this person that knows this person that knows this person, and she does the art for the label. So the whole thing is just sort of grassroots and entirely pure. I will say the music that Andy chooses for the label is very, I would say, I'm going to use the word elite or high level. It's not anything that electronic music beginners are going to gravitate towards. I don't think that they would dislike it, but it's for people that have very specific, refined taste. People that have been in the scene for a long time. Don't fall for like gimmicks, trends, fads, anything like that. I would say all of the music on Verdant is timeless, and it just has a very high level sophistication to it. Like somebody that just sits and sips wine all day and can tell the difference between where a wine came from just by like little nuances to how it looks or how it smells. You could say the same thing about Verdant records and the releases. There's just some kind of like specific magic to each one of the tracks that just kind of makes them, they're really tasty. So I'll get into the records here. I have five of them for you here, and I'll go in chronological order as they were released on the label. The first release on the label was the Emerald City. It was a various artists with 4 different artists appearing on it. I actually don't have that record. I know that a lot of the Verdant fans love that one. It's well regarded, and I think the price has run up a little bit. I don't have that one, but I do have this one here, which I really, really enjoy. This is a sort of split EP between 2 artists. It is Sonidus Echo on the A side and AOS on the B side. And it's also sort of a clever release because each of the artists said, all right, I'm gonna make a track, you make a track, and then we'll remix each other's tracks and we'll put them both on here. So it has kind of a clever concept to it. And before I talk about the music, I want to go back to Sophie O'Leary and her artwork here. This looks like it was painted, and when I first got this record, I immediately put it into a plastic sleeve, which I sort of regret because the sleeve that the outer protective sleeve that I chose was one that was old and sort of banged up looking, and it was obscuring the level of detail and clarity that is in this visual art here. So I was sort of looking at it through a gray, hazy sleeve that wasn't really doing the artwork any favors. But when I look at this up close, I mean, this is really cool looking. I love how it just sort of like pops out. It has this look like it's textured, even though and 3-dimensional, even though it's not. And I just think it's really cool. I'm gonna have to find like a perfectly clear sleeve to put it in so I can keep it safe, but also I would consider even making this a little wall hanger just because I just like how it looks so much. But going on to the music, Sonidus Echo is a producer that basically makes ambient with or without beats, mostly with beats. Something along the lines of what you would see and hear on Silent Season. Sonitus has 2 releases on there. I think a CD album and an EP that was very well received. On the EP on Silent Season is a blue one, I think, and that one's pretty highly regarded. Here, I actually want to feature 2 tracks here. Both of them that I like on this EP are by Sonitus. The first one is Hubble, and I absolutely love how it's basically like as if you were flying through space, or if you were feeling very majestic. If I when I listen to it, I get the feeling of essentially flying through the sky. If you can imagine like a dream sequence of somebody maybe flying at a high altitude, and even though it's cold out and there's a starry backdrop behind them, maybe they have their arms out and they're just sort of like flying over the landscape. I get that feeling. Now, because it's a dream sequence, you could be at 30,000 feet and you're not very cold because you're dreaming, but it has that same ethereal feeling to it. And you'll see that a lot of the releases on this label actually have that same sort of vibe to it. But I like that it's named Hubble. It's appropriate for the sound. It's got space, it's got future and technology all sort of woven into it, and it sounds wonderful. Now, I said on this EP, the artists were remixing each other. So here we have Sonidus Echo again remixing the AOS track on the B side. And in this track here, let's see, I think it was called okay, so the original track was called Supernova, and Sonidus's remix is like the Blue Shift remix of it. And in the first track, it was very positive, uplifting, like I said, like a very ethereal feeling. In the second one, it gets very slow and low and dark and down and dirty. And I love how those two sounds contrast but still fit together very nicely on the same EP. The tone or the sound that stands out to me the most in this track is the little bass tone that hits and kind of bounces around in a very clever fashion. It reminds me of when you were a little kid and you used to have to get a hearing test, and you'd put on your headphones, right, and you had to sit there in the booth and sort of like put your hand up when you heard the tones. It reminds me very much of that type of sound, and it's a very unassuming sound in and of itself, but Sonidus was able to take that sound and cleverly make it bounce around melodically in a way that it becomes a successful lead for the whole track. So a great track to open a set with, or maybe if you needed to bring the energy down and set an ominous vibe in a room, I think it would be great for that. And moving further along in the catalog, we're now up to what is my favorite record on the entire label. And this is another split EP and it's split between an artist named ESB and another artist, Mihail P. I think his last name is Petrovich, if I remember correctly. The EP is called Lullabies for Robots, and I'm probably biased towards it because my favorite color is purple, and I love the deep wine-colored purple tones that you see here. Purple and yellow are also a great combination together. They always have been, so I really like what Sophie did here with the artwork again. Kind of has an old classic, dried and cracked up look to it. I don't know my visual art very well, but I'm sure it's like it's somehow in line with like an old artist or something along those lines. But really, really nice to look at, and is, I think, a great way to represent some excellent music that's on this release here. My choice here for the EP is Mihail P's Permission to Dream. One of the parallels that I can draw to Verdant recordings is, like, if I was going to compare it to another label, I think it's got to be compared to Delcine. And I can't really think of even a second label to compare it to. It's like it's really just Delcine, and it's because of that futuristic, high-level, sophisticated sound that they're bringing. And just like on Delcine, where you might see artists flirting on the line between techno and electro, you can hear that same vibe here. And Permission to Dream is another example of kind of like a broken electro beat. Maybe you could drop this into a techno set to change up the rhythm. And again, just like with the Hubble track where I talked about that feeling of sort of just floating and flying and looking at the world from a high level, and you know, you roll up onto your back and you're looking up out into space, it just has that same sort of feeling. And the emotion that it invokes is that sort of serenity where you feel like you're okay with life, you're okay with your eventual death, and everything is peaceful, and you feel like you just trust the universe as a whole. Moving up to the 5th release on Verdant Recordings, it's another obscure artist. Like I said, most of the artists on this label are obscure. They're just people that Andy met and found to be talented. This artist is Interjection, and Interjection is spelled with 2 exclamation points where the letter I would be. So I guess it's like Interjection. It's got some energy to it. I love this EP. This is a wonderful 4-tracker, and every song on here is listenable, valuable, and something that I would consider playing given the right context. It was hard for me to pick a track. I was tempted to choose Her Blissful Solitude on the A1, but I went with Radiating Soul on the B1. And I thought it was interesting because for me, it draws parallels to the popular dark techno label of the moment, which is Hypnos Recordings. Hypnos is run by Luigi Tozzi, and one of the things I'll say about Hypnos is it's almost a victim of itself for using the same sound bank in pretty much all the tracks. It's like a lot of electronic labels now have pigeonholed themselves into very specific sounds, and they're just sort of like rinsing. It's like, okay, this works, people are buying it, so we're just gonna like rinse and repeat this. And now that they're in that sound, they can't really get out of it. They're like stuck into a groove. The Hypnos sound is actually based on a previous sound, which was, I think, ultimately forged by a combination of Mike Parker and Donato Dazzi in the early 2000s, messing around with like really weird and dark equipment to make techno like nobody else was making. So you have Dazzi and Parker as the true originators of the sound, Hypnos basically taking off from that and making it a little bit more mainstream. And here, Interjection has a track that sounds fundamentally like that web of sound that I was just describing. Where this gets really interesting and really cool is that Interjection didn't just leave it as a Hypnos instrumental, you know, sort of like grimy, you know, weeded out track. He added other elements. He took chances to it. He took chances with it. So if you listen to, for example, the little funk bass line that gets added in, like that just starts hitting in a very, it's like, man, I didn't see that coming. And when you see an artist taking chances like that, you know that there's some level, some of the listeners are not going to like that, but the people that end up liking it a lot, like me, are really going to appreciate it. Now moving up to Verdant's number 7 in the catalog, this is a pretty popular release on the label amongst its fans by Serko Mueller, if I'm saying his name correctly. My choice for the track of the EP on here is the RV800 remix on the A2. And I thought that this showed off a little bit of diversity on the label, because here, everything that I've described up to this point could more or less be fit into the atmospheric or melodic techno category. But here, Andy and the label went tech house with this RV800 remix. If I had to compare this to another sound, think of something that something techy that you might find on Sushi Tech or Berg Audio, which is another label that takes dub techno elements and tech house and sort of fuses them together into 7, 8, 9-minute tracks. This RV800 track is by RV800 is another artist that I don't know. I don't even think I could find a picture for him or her, but they brought a really cool vibe here. Again, tech house underpinnings, dub techno on top of that, and it almost sounds like if Claude Von Stroke took one of his party tech house bass lines and dropped it over top of a Sushi tech house track with dub techno tinges, and you would just get this like magic combination where it's not all party and it's not all sophistication. It meets right in the middle. If you listen to the bass line in this specifically, I would recommend listening to this sample that I'm about to give you on a setup that has a subwoofer that has the low end represented correctly. You'll hear just how deep and pure that bass line is. And closing out the episode, one of Andy's more recent releases is Verdant number 9. And this is another split EP, this time represented by Nisa Azadika and Allison Marks. Now, if you want heavier beats, I think the Allison Marks side of this EP is possibly some of the hardest techno that you'll see represented on the label. Another place to find that would be with the ones that are behind me on the various artist compilation. There's a couple of like harder or hardish beats on there. My choice though for this is the A2 by Nisa Azadika, and the track is called Pathetic. Ironically, the track is anything but pathetic. And when I listened to this, it actually gave me momentary flashbacks to my last episode that I just did was Danny Howells, and he had his own label, Dig Deeper, that he launched around 2009 to 2014. And some of the mainstay tracks on that label, the most popular ones, the one that the label's most known for, have these very cheery, uplifting, optimistic melodies in them. And in the track Pathetic, which has like a negative connotation to it, it's actually a very genuine, sincere, and uplifting track. So Great way to basically round out the EP, round out the label, and I absolutely love this. Again, Sophie is back with more clever cover art on this one too. So another potential wall hanger if you're just looking for something nice to have sitting around to just visually look at and enjoy. This is another great tribute for Sophie. Andy, thank you so much for the music that you've released so far on Verdant Recordings. I love how you just build it from the ground up, and I'm sure that you've made some great friends from this label. I appreciate the most recent ambient release that you sent me. I love it, and it's a nice way for me to like relax in the very wee hours of the night when the beats are just not gonna fly in my household. I'm looking forward to more releases from you, and again, thank you for your friendship up to this point. Take care.